Marcus Chen felt his legs wobble as he stepped off the transport ship onto the crystalline landing platform of Zelthard planet's purple sky stretched above him like a bruised canvas. And the air tasted sharp with minerals he couldn't name. He was Earth's first ambassador to the Kezerati Queendom. And right now he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Welcoming committee stood before him in perfect formation. 12 Kezerati warriors, each standing 7 feet tall with chitinous armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Their forearms moved in synchronized patterns, clicking and gesturing in ways Marcus's translation implant struggled to interpret. The largest warrior stepped forward, compound eyes shimmering with colors that shifted from green to violet. Ambassador Chun. The warrior's voice came through the translator as a series of clicks and hums. Queen Vexala honors your arrival with the ceremony of 16 protocols. Marcus's heart sank. 16 protocols meant 16 hours minimum. And he'd been traveling for 8 months through space with minimal real rest. The ceremony began immediately. First came the greeting of ancestors, where Marcus had to stand perfectly still while Kezerati priests chanted the names of every human leader dating back 2 centuries. Then, the presentation of gifts, elaborate crystalline structures that weighed at least 30 pounds each, which Marcus had to carry while walking through the palace gardens. The dancing of intentions followed, where Marcus attempted to mirror the warrior's forearm movements with his measly 2 limbs, drawing what he hoped were polite chittering sounds rather than mockery. By the 8th hour, Marcus's vision started blurring. The ceremonial drink they kept offering him, a thick purple liquid that tasted like copper and flowers, made everything feel distant and soft. Honor us with your endurance, the lead warrior clicked approvingly as they finally entered the crystalline Spire Palace. The structure rose 300 stories into the purple sky, made entirely of some translucent material that caught the light of Zelthar's twin suns inside. The corridors twisted in impossible angles, following Kezerati geometric principles that hurt Marcus's earth-trained eyes. Hundreds of Kezerati moved through the palace workers, warriors, scholars, all clicking and humming in a constant symphony of communication. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Marcus was brought before Queen Vexala herself. She sat upon a throne carved from a single massive crystal. Her armor plates a deep crimson that marked her royal status. Her forearms rested on the throne's arms, claws gleaming unlike the other Kezerati. She wore elaborate jewelry, bands of silver metal around each arm, a crown that seemed to float above her head, using some technology Marcus didn't understand. Human, she said, her voice deeper than the others, resonating through Marcus's chest. You have traveled far to seek alliance with the Kezerati Queendom. Marcus bowed as deeply as his exhausted body would allow. Your Majesty, Earth sends its greatest respect and hopes for friendship between our peoples. The Queen's antennae twitched, amusement, perhaps, or skepticism. Friendship is earned through strength and honor, not words, she replied. The Galactic Assembly tells us humans are unremarkable, average in strength, average in technology, average in every measurable way. Perhaps that's our strength. Your Majesty, Marcus said, fighting to keep his eyes open. We adapt, we connect. We find ways to bridge differences. The Queen made a sound like grinding stone. Laughter. Marcus's implant suggested. We shall see, Ambassador, she said, dismissing him with a wave of her upper right arm. Toxar will show you to the guest chambers. Marcus followed the warrior named Toxar through more twisting corridors, his feet moving on autopilot. The ceremonial drink's effects intensified. Everything felt warm and distant, like he was floating through honey. Toxar stopped before a large door carved with intricate patterns. Clicking rapidly, Marcus's translator implant flickered. The device was struggling after 16 hours of constant use. He caught fragments. Chamber and rest, and something that might have been honor. Toxar gestured at the door. Then at another door, further down the corridor. Clicking more instructions, Marcus nodded. Understanding maybe half of it, the warrior bowed and left. Footsteps clicking away down the corridor, Marcus stared at the two doors. His exhausted brain trying to remember which one Toxar had indicated first. The one on the left? The one straight ahead? He chose the door directly in front of him and pressed his palm against the crystal panel. It slid open with a soft. The room beyond took his breath away. Elaborate. Tapestries hung from walls that seemed to shift colors in the light. And the ceiling displayed a holographic projection of Zelthar's night sky. In the center of the room sat a raised platform covered in what looked like cushions, though they had an odd gel-like quality that seemed to ripple and move. Heat radiated from them. The Khazarati preferred much warmer temperatures than humans. Marcus's survival instincts barely registered. He was beyond caring about comfort. He stumbled forward, his legs finally giving out as he reached the platform. The gel cushions molded around him, warm and enveloping. The ceremonial drink pulled him down into darkness before he could even remove his formal jacket. Sleep claimed him instantly, deep and dreamless. 3 hours later, Queen Vexala finished her final council meeting of the cycle. Her advisors had droned on about trade disputes and border patrols until her neural clusters ached with fatigue. She dismissed them with sharp clicks of irritation and made her way through the private corridors to her personal chambers. Guards outside her door bowed low, their antennae flat against their heads in respect. She entered without a word. The door sealing behind her, the room's heat signature, immediately felt wrong. Her infrared vision picked up an unexpected source, something cooler than it should be. Right in the center of her sleeping platform, Vexala's combat instincts engaged instantly. Her forearms spread wide, claws extending as she approached the intruder. Then she saw him, the human ambassador. Marcus Chen lay curled on her bed, fast asleep. His small frame looked almost childlike among her cushions, his face peaceful and unguarded. For a long moment, Veta simply stared. This was unprecedented. Entering a queen's private chambers uninvited was punishable by immediate execution, yet something stopped her from calling the guards. Perhaps it was the sheer absurdity of it. This tiny human, supposedly Earth's best diplomatic mind, sleeping in the one place that should have terrified him most. Or perhaps it was something else. For the first time in 3 cycles, Vexala felt her neural tension ease slightly. The human's presence created an odd calm in the room. Like the eye of a storm, she moved closer, studying him. His thermal signature registered at 98.6 degrees, much cooler than Khazarati norms. His breathing came slow and steady, and his brain waves, she could sense them through her antennae, pulsed in strange, regular patterns unlike anything she'd encountered, against every instinct and protocol. Queen Vexala made a decision. She would wait until morning to deal with this breach. For now, exhaustion pulled at her like gravity. She moved to the far side of the sleeping platform, as far from the human as possible, and settled into her rest position. But sleep came easier than it had in years, and sometime in the deep night, her unconscious body moved closer to the cool, calm presence beside Irby Dawn. Queen Vexala held the human in all 4 of her arms, her body wrapped around his like a protective shell. Neither of them knew yet that this accident would change the galaxy forever. Warmth surrounded Marcus like a cocoon. When consciousness slowly returned to him, his first thought was that the guest chambers had excellent heating systems. His second thought was that something heavy pressed against him from all sides. His third thought, arriving with crystal clarity, was pure terror. Marcus's eyes snapped open. Chitinous armor filled his vision, deep crimson plates that could only belong to one being on this entire planet. 4 arms wrapped around him, Two circled his torso. One cradled his head with surprising gentleness, and one lay across his legs like an anchor. Queen Vexala, the most powerful being on Zelthar, held him like humans might hold a stuffed animal. Her body temperature radiated at what felt like a furnace. His implant would probably register at somewhere around 105 degrees. Yet somehow, it wasn't uncomfortable. His own cooler temperature seemed to create a feedback loop. Their bodies seeking equilibrium, the queen's breathing came slow and steady, her armored chest rising and falling against his back. Her antennae lay relaxed against her head, twitching occasionally with dreams. Marcus had studied Kizarati culture during his 8-month journey. He knew exactly what he'd done entering a queen's private chambers uninvited carried the death penalty, not a quick death either. Kizarati justice involved days of ritual combat where the condemned faced warriors in succession until exhaustion and wounds claimed them. His heart hammered against his ribs, surely loud enough to wake her. He tried to remember how he'd gotten here, the ceremony, the exhaustion, Taxar showing him to chambers. Had he misunderstood which door? Outside the sealed entrance, Marcus heard the clicking footsteps of guards on patrol there. Rhythm suggested discipline and alertness. These warriors would kill him without hesitation if their queen commanded it. Had to escape before she woke. Marcus tried to shift his weight slowly, testing whether he could slide out from her grip. The lower right arm tightened immediately, claws flexing dangerously close to his ribs. He froze. The queen's breathing changed, deeper, slower, as if she was settling into even more comfortable sleep. Sweat beaded on Marcus's forehead despite the temperature. Balance minutes stretched like hours. He became hyper-aware of every detail. The way her armor plates had retracted slightly in sleep, revealing softer tissue beneath. How her mandibles clicked softly with each exhale. The faint scent of minerals and something almost like cinnamon that came from her body. His translator implant picked up her brainwave patterns through proximity. They showed unusual activity. Kizarati neural structures typically maintained high-frequency alertness even in rest, a survival adaptation from their evolutionary past. But the queen's patterns looked different right now. They'd slowed, deepened, synchronized somehow with his own sleeping rhythms. Marcus realized with shock that she was experiencing what humans would call deep REM sleep, according to his briefings. Kizarati rarely achieved this state. Their constant neural vigilance prevented the kind of restorative rest that humans took for granted. Queen's breathing shifted again this time. Marcus felt her consciousness returning. Her grip loosened slightly, then tightened again as awareness flooded back. One compound eye opened, then the other, for 3 long heartbeats. They stared at each other, human and alien, ambassador and queen, intruder and victim. Then Queen Vexala moved with the speed her species was famous for. She released Marcus and sprang backward off the sleeping platform, all 4 arms spreading wide in a combat stance, her claws extended fully, each one capable of punching through steel. "Explain," she commanded, her voice sharp enough to cut stone. "Before I summon the guards to tear you apart." Marcus scrambled to his knees, hands raised in surrender. "Your Majesty, His voice cracked with fear. "I made a terrible mistake. Clearly," the queen hissed, her antennae rigid with anger. Or was it something else? "The ceremony exhausted me," Marcus continued rapidly, words tumbling over each other. "Taxar showed me to chambers, but I was so tired, and the translator was glitching, and I couldn't understand which door. I thought this was the guest room." The queen's mandibles clicked in a pattern Marcus's implant identified as skepticism. "You expect me to believe you accidentally committed a crime punishable by death?" "I expect nothing, Your Majesty," Marcus said, lowering his head. "I offer only truth and sincere apology. If you want my life for this insult, I understand. Silence stretched between them. Marcus waited for the Queen to call her guards, to order his execution, to end Earth's diplomatic mission before it truly began. Instead, Queen Vexala asked a question that surprised them both. "How did you do it?" Marcus looked up, confused. "Do what, Your Majesty?" "I haven't slept that deeply in 3 cycles," the Queen said softly, her combat stance relaxing slightly. "My neurophysicians tell me it's impossible for a Kizarati to achieve true rest. Our biology prevents it." She moved closer, studying Marcus with her compound eyes that saw far more than visible light. "Yet with you in my chambers, I experienced something I haven't felt since I was newly hatched. Complete restorative sleep." Marcus's scientific mind engaged despite his fear. "Human biorhythms?" he suggested. "Our brainwave patterns during REM sleep are very different from Kizarati neural activity." "Show me your hand," the Queen commanded. Marcus extended his right hand. Trembling slightly, the Queen reached out with her upper left arm and placed her clawed hand against his palm. The contrast was stark. Her hand was twice the size of his, armored and deadly, while his looked soft and vulnerable. But something happened when they touched. The Queen's antennae twitched rapidly, her mandibles parting in surprise. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Your bioelectric field. It's creating interference patterns with my neural clusters." She pulled back, all 4 arms wrapping around herself in what Marcus recognized as a defensive posture. "This is impossible," she said, but her voice carried wonder rather than anger. "Humans are supposed to be unremarkable. That's what every species report says. Maybe we're remarkable in unremarkable ways." Marcus offered carefully, the Queen's eyes fixed on him with new intensity. "You will explain this to my science cast," she declared. "Under guard and observation, they will study this phenomenon." "Of course, Your Majesty," Marcus agreed quickly. "Whatever you require, and Marcus Chun," the Queen added, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "If you speak of this night to anyone, if you tell a single being that you saw your Queen in vulnerable rest, I will ensure your death is neither quick nor honorable. Your Majesty has my absolute discretion." Marcus promised. The Queen moved to a communication panel, clicking commands within seconds. Guards entered, not to drag Marcus away for execution, but to escort him to proper guest chambers under watch as Marcus was led away. He glanced back to see Queen Vexala standing by her sleeping platform, one hand touching the spot where he'd lain. Her expression was unreadable, but her antennae drooped with something that looked almost like loneliness in that moment. Marcus understood that he'd stumbled onto something far more significant than a diplomatic incident, discovered that the galaxy's most fearsome warrior queen was desperately, painfully tired, and somehow, impossibly, an average human had given her the one thing her species couldn't provide for themselves, the gift of true rest. The question now was what both of them would do with that knowledge. As the guards clicked and hummed around him, leading him through the palace's twisting corridors, Marcus realized that his diplomatic mission had just become far more complicated than anyone on Earth could have imagined, but also, perhaps far more important. The science laboratory occupied an entire floor of the crystalline spire palace, filled with equipment Marcus only half recognized. Dr. Zixara, the Queen's chief neural physician, circled him with 3 of her 4 arms, holding scanning devices while the 4th took rapid notes. "Fascinating," she clicked, her antennae quivering with excitement. "Completely fascinating and utterly unexpected." Marcus sat on an examination platform while a dozen Kizarati scientists monitored various screens showing his biological data. Queen Vexala observed from an elevated platform, her presence making every scientist work with extra precision. "What exactly are you finding, Doctor?" the Queen asked. Jixra gestured at a holographic display showing Marcus's brain activity alongside typical Kizarati neural patterns. Your Majesty. The human produces brainwave frequencies we've never encountered before, she explained. During what they call sleep, their neural activity follows these deep, rhythmic patterns. The display showed Marcus's brainwaves rolling like ocean waves, slow, deep, regular. Kizarati neural structures maintain constant high-frequency alertness, Zixara continued. This served our ancestors well when predators hunted us. But it prevents true restorative rest. She pulled up another display, this one showing what happened when Marcus's brainwaves came near Kizarati patterns. Watch what occurs when the human's patterns interact with ours. The two waveforms began to synchronize, the Kizarati patterns slowing and deepening to match the human rhythms. Impossible. Breath one of the younger scientists observed. Zixara corrected sharply. Which makes it possible by definition over the next 3 hours. The scientists ran test after test. They discovered that Marcus's body temperature created an optimal thermal exchange for Kizarati. Biology. His cooler 98.6 degrees acted like a heat sink, allowing overheated neural clusters to regulate themselves. His emotional state produced measurable effects too. When Marcus felt calm, his bioelectric field resonated at frequencies that dampened Kizarati's stress hormones even. His breath carried compounds that affected their respiratory neural centers. It's like he's a walking relaxation chamber. One scientist clicked in amazement. But why? Another demanded, why would humans evolve this way? Marcus spoke up from the examination platform. We didn't evolve to affect Kizarati. We evolved to affect each other. The scientist turned to stare at him. Humans are deeply social, Marcus explained. We raise our young for years. We live in close family groups. We need each other to survive. He gestured at his own body. Everything you're measuring, the calming biorhythms, the temperature regulation, the emotional resonance, these evolved so humans could comfort each other, help each other sleep, reduce each other's stress. You mean you're all like this? Zixara clicked in disbelief. Every human on Earth, Marcus confirmed. We just never knew it would work on other species. Queen Vexala leaned forward on her platform. Doctor, what would be the effect if I were to hypothetically spend regular time in proximity to the human? Zixara's antennae drooped with concern. Your Majesty, I must counsel caution. I ask for data, not caution, the Queen said sharply. The doctor clicked nervously. The effects could be significant. Improve neural recovery, enhanced cognitive function, reduction in stress-related cellular damage. She paused, then added, but Your Majesty, this could also create dependency. Your biology might adapt to expect this resonance. Noted, the Queen said dismissively. Continue your research. As the scientists returned to their work, Marcus noticed movement in the observation gallery above several Kizarati in different armor colors watched intently. Court officials, he guessed. Or perhaps military commanders, their antennae angles suggested. Intense interest mixed with something that looked like concern later that evening. Marcus was returned to proper guest quarters, these ones actually designated for him, with human-appropriate furniture and temperature controls. 2 guards stood outside his door at all times. He was reviewing his notes on Kizarati's social structure when his door chimed, "Enter," he called. Expecting a servant instead, a Kizarati in deep blue armor entered. Closing the door behind him, Ambassador Chun. The visitor clicked softly. I am Commander Terval, military advisor to Queen Vexala. Marcus stood immediately, sensing tension. Commander, how can I help you? Terval's forearms gestured in a pattern Marcus's implant identified as political. Maneuvering. You have placed our queen in a difficult position, the commander said bluntly. There are factions in court who see your influence as weakness. I have no desire to influence anything, Marcus protested. I'm just trying to establish diplomatic relations. Intention matters less than perception, Terval replied. The Queen has not shown vulnerability in her entire reign. Now court officials see her consulting with aliens about her private rest patterns. The commander moved closer, looming over Marcus with clear intimidation. Some advisors believe she should eliminate you to demonstrate strength. Marcus's throat went dry. And what do you believe, Commander? Terval's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. I believe the Queen hasn't made a clear decision in weeks, he admitted. She's been operating on instinct and discipline, pushing through neural fatigue that would have killed lesser Kizarati. He gestured at Marcus with his upper right arm. If you truly can help her think clearly again, then perhaps you're more valuable alive than dead. Then why tell me about the political danger? Marcus asked. Because in 3 days, the Queen faces the Gauntlet of Clarity, Terval explained. A traditional test where she must command a 72-hour military simulation without rest. His antennae drooped with concern. In her current state, I doubt she can complete it. No, Kizarati Queen has succeeded in living memory due to neural fatigue. Marcus understood immediately. And if she fails? Her rivals will call for her removal, Terval said grimly. They'll claim she's unfit to rule, compromised by exhaustion. What can I do? Marcus asked. That, Terval clicked, is what I came to ask you, human. The next morning, Marcus was summoned to Queen Vex'ahlia's strategy chamber. She stood over a holographic map showing military formations and star systems. All 4 arms moving pieces with lightning speed. Ambassador, she acknowledged without looking up. You've heard about the gauntlet. Yes. Your Majesty, my rivals believe I'll fail. She continued, still focused on the map. They're probably correct. I haven't achieved true rest in years. And 72 hours of complex strategy will push my neural degradation past sustainable limits. She finally looked at him, compound eyes reflecting the hologram's light. I'm going to propose something unprecedented, she said. Something that will either save my rule or destroy it completely. Marcus waited. Heart pounding. I want you present during the gauntlet, Queen Vex'ahlia declared. With strict protocols and monitoring, I'll take brief rest periods with you nearby to maximize neural recovery. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully. Won't that prove your rival's claims that you're dependent on outside help? Perhaps, the Queen admitted. Or perhaps it will prove that true strength lies in recognizing when to accept assistance. She moved around the holographic table to face him. Directly, you told me humans are remarkable in unremarkable ways. That your average nature is actually your strength. Marcus nodded slowly. Then help me demonstrate. That wisdom isn't weakness, she said. Help me show the Kizarati that adaptation and alliance are more powerful than rigid tradition. Looking into the Queen's compound eyes, Marcus saw not just a fearsome alien ruler, but a leader taking an enormous risk on faith. I'll help in any way I can. Your Majesty, he promised Queen Vex'ahlia. Mandibles spread in what Marcus had learned was a Kizarati smile. Then let's show the Galactic Assembly what happens when humans and Kizarati work together, she said outside the chamber. In corridors and council rooms throughout the palace, Marcus knew that rival factions were already plotting. The next 3 days would determine not just the Queen's fate, but possibly Earth's entire future in galactic politics, all because one exhausted human had accidentally fallen asleep in the wrong bed sometimes. Marcus thought the galaxy turned on the smallest of hinges. The gauntlet chamber stretched 3 stories high. Its walls lined with observation platforms where the entire Kizarati court had gathered to watch holographic. Projectors filled the center space with a massive star map showing simulated enemy fleets, supply lines, and defensive positions. Queen Vex'ahlia stood at the command platform, her forearms already moving across control interfaces, while battle data streamed past her compound eyes. "Let the gauntlet of clarity begin," declared High Chancellor Kreft, a massive Kizarati whose dark purple armor marked him as the Queen's primary rival. Marcus sat in a designated area 30 feet from the Queen's platform, close enough for proximity effects but far enough to avoid claims of direct interference. Medical monitors surrounded him, tracking every aspect of his biology while Kizarati physicians watched the data DR. Zixara had designed careful protocols. Every 6 hours, the Queen would take a 15-minute rest period near Marcus. During those breaks, she would remain conscious, but allow his biorhythms to help regulate her neural recovery. It was unprecedented, controversial, and according to the scientists' calculations, just barely possible. The simulation began with brutal intensity. Enemy fleets, represented by red holographic markers, swept through 3 different systems. Simultaneously, Queen Vexola's mandibles clicked rapidly as she deployed defensive forces, calculated supply chain logistics, and coordinated counterattacks across multiple fronts. Marcus watched in awe as her forearms danced across interfaces, each limb controlling different aspects of the massive operation. She thought in dimensions he could barely comprehend, seeing patterns and possibilities that would take human commanders hours to calculate. But he also saw the cost after 2 hours. Her movements became slightly less fluid after 4 hours. One of her antennae started twitching with neural stress by hour 5. She was compensating, using raw computational power and instinct rather than clear strategic thinking. First rest period approaching. "There's Ixara," announced softly. The Queen made a sharp clicking sound of acknowledgement, but didn't stop working. She guided 3 more fleet movements, authorized 2 research developments, and adjusted defensive positions around a critical manufacturing planet. Then, finally, she stepped down from the command platform and moved to the rest area where Marcus waited. The entire court watched in silence as their Queen lowered herself onto a cushioned platform near the human. "Don't speak," she said quietly, closing her compound eyes. "Just be." Marcus sat cross-legged on his own platform, consciously slowing his breathing and focusing on calm thoughts. The medical monitors showed his brainwaves dropping into deep, rhythmic patterns. Within 2 minutes, the Queen's neural activity began synchronizing, not fully, but enough. Her stress hormones decreased measurably. Her overheated neural clusters cooled slightly against the background of Marcus's lower body. Temperature. 15 minutes passed in silence, broken only by soft chittering from the observation platforms. When time was called, Queen Vexola stood with visible, renewed energy. She returned to command and immediately saw something she'd missed before. An enemy supply weakness that could be exploited. Her forces pushed through the gap, collapsing an entire enemy front. High Chancellor Krevda's antennae rigid with displeasure. Pattern repeated throughout the first day. 6 hours of intense strategic command, 15 minutes of rest near Marcus, then back to battle by hour 20. Something remarkable began happening during one rest period. Marcus asked a simple question. "Your Majesty, why do the enemy fleets keep using the same approach vectors?" The Queen's eyes opened. "Because our defensive doctrine expects it. Standard Kizarati military theory based on honor combat principles. But humans would try something sneaky." Marcus mused. "Maybe pretend to retreat, let you overextend, then hit your supply lines." He paused, embarrassed. "Sorry, I shouldn't presume to comment on military strategy." "No," the Queen said slowly, her antennae perking with interest. "Continue that thought." Marcus hesitated, then explained how human military history was filled with unexpected tactics, ambushes, false retreats, psychological warfare. Zorathi strategy, he realized, relied heavily on instinctive aggression patterns and honorable confrontation. The next time Queen Vexala returned to command, she implemented something no Kaiserati commander had tried before. She ordered a false retreat. Her court gasped as their queen's forces pulled back from a winnable battle, a simulated enemy, programmed with standard tactical responses, pursued aggressively, exactly as Marcus had predicted. Then the queen's forces turned and struck at the overextended supply lines, crippling 3 enemy fleets in one coordinated move. Unorthodox. Chancellor Krevd clicked disapprovingly from the observation deck. Effective. Commander Terval countered loudly. The second day brought harder challenges. The simulation introduced political complications, rebellious colonies, trade disputes, internal conflicts that needed diplomatic solutions. Alongside military ones, Karathi instinct leaned toward direct confrontation and shows of strength. But during rest periods, Marcus shared human approaches, negotiation, compromise, finding win-win solutions. It sounds weak, the Queen said, during one break. It sounds efficient, Marcus replied. Why waste resources fighting when you can get what you need through trade or alliance? The Queen absorbed this, processing it against her cultural programming when a simulated colony threatened rebellion. Instead of sending warships immediately, she tried negotiation first, offering trade concessions in exchange for loyalty. The colony accepted. Saving enormous military resources, her court chittered with confusion. This wasn't traditional Kaiserati behavior, but the results spoke clearly. Her forces remained strong, her resources abundant, her position secure by day 3. Exhaustion clawed at both of them. Marcus's own rest was limited. He had to maintain calm biorhythms during the Queen's breaks, which meant managing his own stress and fatigue. Queen Vesala showed signs of strain. Despite the rest periods, her movements grew slower. Her response times increased. The simulation's designers had anticipated this. The final challenge came at hour 68. Simultaneous crises erupted across her empire. 3 enemy fleets attacking different systems. A plague outbreak on a manufacturing world, political assassination attempts, and a diplomatic incident with a neutral power. It was designed to be impossible. No single commander could manage all these variables while suffering. From days of neural fatigue, the Queen stood at her command platform, all 4 arms moving, but no longer with their earlier precision. Marcus watched from his position. Seeing her struggle, he couldn't help with military tactics or complex logistics. He was just a human diplomat, but he understood something in that moment. Humans succeeded not because they were strongest or smartest, but because they knew when to delegate, when to trust, when to ask for help. During the crisis, as the Queen tried to handle everything alone, Marcus stood up. "Your Majesty," he called out, knowing he was breaking protocol. "You're trying to control everything yourself." She turned to glare at him. "I must. The gauntlet requires you to command," Marcus interrupted gently. "Not to micromanage. Command means trusting your subordinates." He gestured at the holographic battle map. "You have fleet commanders who can handle military operations. Let them fight while you coordinate. You have planetary governors who can manage the plague response. Give them authority and resources. You have diplomats who can smooth over political incidents. Trust their expertise." The Queen stared at him, her compound eyes reflecting the hologram's chaotic light. Then she did something unprecedented. She delegated with swift commands. She assigned each crisis to capable subordinates, giving them authority to act while she maintained strategic oversight. Instead of trying to control everything, she coordinated, making high-level decisions while trusting others with execution. The observation platforms erupted in shocked chittering. This wasn't how Kizarati queens ruled. They dominated. They controlled. They personally managed every detail, but it worked, with the Queen focusing on strategy rather than tactical minutiae. Her neural resources could handle the load subordinates, empowered with real authority. Responded with creativity and initiative within 2 hours. Every crisis had been resolved or contained at hour 72. The simulation ended. Queen Vexala had not only completed the gauntlet of clarity, she'd achieved the highest score in recorded Kizarati history. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Then Commander Turval began clicking his claws against his armor in the Kizarati gesture of respect. Other military commanders joined him. The sound built until even some of the Queen's rivals reluctantly added their approval. High Chancellor Krevdes Anteni drooped in. Defeat. Queen Vexala stood tall on her command platform. Exhausted but triumphant, she looked directly at Marcus and made a slight gesture with her lower right arm, the Kizarati equivalent of a grateful bow in that moment. Everyone watching understood the Queen had not been weakened by accepting help from the human. She had been strengthened by the wisdom to recognize what humans offered, and the galaxy would never see either species quite the same way again. The Galactic Assembly Chamber orbited the neutral planet of Concordia, a massive station where representatives from 200 species gathered to debate the future of galactic civilization. Marcus stood in the human delegation pod, a small platform that floated among hundreds of others in the spherical chamber. Earth's request for assembly membership had seemed routine when submitted. Months ago now, it had become the most contested issue of the cycle. Ambassador Velkoth of the Shreen Confederacy, a species of energy beings who appeared as glowing clouds contained in crystalline shells, spoke first against humanity's admission. The concern is not human capability. Velkoth's translated voice echoed through the chamber, but rather their unprecedented influence capacity. Holographic displays showed footage from the Kizarati gauntlet, Queen Vesala's unprecedented success, Marcus's presence during rest periods, the shocked reactions of the court. We have witnessed one human fundamentally alter the behavior of the galaxy's most rigid warrior culture. Velkoth continued. What happens when billions of humans spread through assembly space? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Clicks, hums, whistles, and sounds. Marcus's translator couldn't even identify Ambassador Daxilor of the Numerian collective, insectoids similar to Earth's mantises but with 6 limbs and crystalline brains, chimed in. The Numenians proposed restricted membership. They clicked precisely. Humans may join but must accept limitations on their movement and interaction with other species. That's not membership. Marcus protested, his voice amplified across the chamber. That's supervised probation. Then perhaps, suggested Chancellor Zorath of the Vrix Empire, a reptilian species known for their calculating nature. Humanity should remain outside the assembly until we better understand their capabilities. More murmurs of agreement. Marcus felt Earth's chances slipping away. The irony was bitter. Humans were being rejected for being too good at getting along with others. Then Queen Vexala's platform floated forward into the central debate sphere. The entire assembly fell silent. Kizarati Queendom rarely participated in debates, preferring to vote silently and enforce their will through military strength. Members of the assembly, Queen Vesala began, her forearms spread wide in formal address. I speak not as a rival voice, but as living evidence. Her compound eyes swept across the chamber. Before Ambassador Chun arrived on Zelthar, I had not experienced true restorative rest in 3 cycles. Medical data appeared on the holographic displays. Her neural degradation, stress hormone levels, declining cognitive performance. I was slowly dying, she stated bluntly. As do all Kizarati leaders, we sacrifice our health for our duty, accepting early death as the price of command. She gestured toward Marcus. Then this human accidentally entered my private chambers, a mistake that should have resulted in his immediate execution. The assembly listened with rapt attention. Instead, I discovered that human biorhythms create measurable therapeutic effects for Kizarati neurology, the Queen continued. But more importantly, I learned something about strength. She paused, letting the silence build for my entire reign. I believe strength meant controlling everything, managing every detail, never showing vulnerability or accepting help. The humans showed me differently, Vexala said. Through their own evolutionary history of cooperation and mutual support, they demonstrated that true strength includes knowing when to delegate, when to trust, when to accept assistance. More medical data appeared. Her improved cognitive function, reduced neural stress, enhanced strategic capabilities. My success in the gauntlet of clarity came not from denying human influence, but from embracing it, she declared. I performed better than any Kizarati queen in history, precisely because I was willing to learn from another species. Chancellor Zorath hissed skeptically. You advocate for species that can manipulate your biology and behavior. I advocate for species that offer complementary strengths, Queen Vexala corrected sharply. The assembly was founded on the principle that diverse species working together achieve more than any single species alone. She turned to address the entire chamber. Yet now you fear humans because they're too good at cooperation, because their evolutionary path specialized them for creating bonds and bridging differences. That's not a threat, she continued forcefully. That's exactly what the assembly needs. Ambassador Velkoth's energy form pulsed with agitation. But what if humans use these abilities for manipulation or control? Marcus decided it was time to speak. May I address the assembly? He asked formally, the presiding arbiter, an ancient slug-like being called a eternal observer, granted permission with a gesture. Marcus's platform moved into the central sphere beside Queen Vexala's members of the assembly. He began, fighting to keep his voice steady. I understand your concerns. You see humans as potentially dangerous because we can influence other species in ways you didn't expect. But consider what that really means, Marcus continued. Every species here has something they excel at. The Shreen manipulate energy. The Nemenians process data at incredible speeds. The Gasserati dominate in combat. Humans excel at connection, he explained simply. At understanding emotions, at building relationships, at finding common ground. He gestured at the assembled species. You call it manipulation. We call it empathy. You call it dangerous influence. We call it friendship. Marcus pulled up data on his own display. Earth's history. Conflicts and cooperation, failures and successes. Yes. Humans have used these abilities destructively, he admitted. We've manipulated each other, started wars, caused tremendous suffering. But we've also used them to build civilizations, to forgive enemies, to create art and music that speaks across cultural boundaries, to care for each other even when it costs us dearly. He looked directly at Queen Vexala. When I accidentally entered the Queen's chambers, I could have tried to exploit the situation, to use her vulnerability for political advantage. Instead, I apologized, Marcus said simply. I offered my life if that's what honor required. That's what humans do when we're at our best, he continued. We see another being in pain or need, and our instinct is to help, not to exploit. Are we perfect? Marcus asked the assembly. Absolutely not. We're average in almost every measurable way. But maybe that's our strength, he suggested. We're not so specialized that we can't adapt. Not so powerful that we threaten everyone. Not so different that we can't find common ground. We're just human enough to understand that we need each other. The assembly chamber fell into deep silence as representatives processed this. Finally, Ambassador Thexelar of the Numerian Collective spoke. The human makes a compelling argument. They clicked. Perhaps the question is not whether to admit humanity, but how to integrate their unique capabilities into assembly operations. I propose an experiment. Dexter continued. Admit humanity with full membership, but assign human ambassadors to serve as cultural liaisons between species, experiencing diplomatic difficulties. Let them do what they apparently do best, they suggested. Bridge differences and build understanding. Murmurs of interest rippled through the chamber. Chancellor Zorath hissed thoughtfully. The Vrix Empire has had border disputes with the Cordium clans for 6 cycles. Traditional diplomacy has failed. Perhaps, he admitted reluctantly, a human perspective could find solutions we've missed. More species chimed in with similar situations, conflicts, misunderstandings. Diplomatic dead ends within an hour. The conversation had shifted entirely. Instead of debating whether to admit humanity, the assembly was discussing how to best utilize human diplomatic capabilities. The vote, when it came, was overwhelming. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, but with a unique designation. Humanity would serve as official diplomatic facilitators, with the right to assign ambassadors to any dispute or negotiation where their skills could help. Marcus felt tears threatening. Earth had not just joined the galactic community. They found their purpose within it. After the session ended, Marcus found Queen Vesala on an observation deck overlooking Concordia's ochre clouds. Your Majesty, he said softly, approaching carefully. Thank you for speaking on humanity's behalf. The Queen's antennae twitched with what Marcus had learned was amusement. I spoke only truth, she replied. You changed my perspective, improved my rule, and probably saved my life. She turned to face him fully. But I also took a risk by publicly acknowledging my vulnerability and your role in addressing it. I forever altered how the galaxy sees the Kizarati. Do you regret it? Marcus asked. No, Vexala said without hesitation. I regret only that it took a diplomatic accident to teach me this lesson. She extended her upper right hand, and Marcus placed his own hand in her clawed palm. The Kizarati Queendom requests that you remain as our permanent ambassador, she said formally. If Earth agrees, Marcus smiled. I think I'd like that. Good. The Queen's mandibles spread in her version of a smile. Because you still owe me many nights of sleep. They stood together watching the stars, human and Kizarati, 2 species who should have been incompatible, but had instead found unexpected harmony behind them. The Galactic Assembly continued its debates and discussions, but now, for the first time, human voices would be part of those conversations, all because one exhausted diplomat had accidentally fallen asleep in the wrong bed.